This week on Business Without Bullshit, we're releasing a very special episode for World Mental Health Day. We're joined by Jerry Hyde, the so-called most dangerous therapist in the world, and filmmaker Mai Hua, to explore masculinity, vulnerability, and what it really takes to create an honest human connection in an age of disconnection. From retreats with no phones or even showers, to confronting trauma, to rethinking what it means to support one another. This conversation goes deep into the heart of mental health for men, women, and everyone in between. Check it out. Hello and welcome to Business Without Bullshit. I am Andy Ori, and today we are joined by Jerry Hyde and Mai Hua.
Yes,
I got it right. I didn't practice the surname. Jerry, famously dubbed the most dangerous therapist in the world, though he prefers mentor or companion, makes a return to the podcast from episode 81. God knows what we're on now. Our very first episode recorded in this studio, in fact. Is that right? Unbelievable. Jerry brings nearly 30 years of experience as a humanistic and integrated psychotherapist, blending tantric, shamanic, and alternative philosophies into his practice. He leads the UK's largest men's group practice, works with people of all orientations, and mentors group leaders. Mai is a French Vietnamese artist and filmmaker based between Paris and London. With 20 years as a color designer and a decade of filmmaking, she's directing 3 documentaries and produced hundreds of portraits. Mai is now focused on her latest project, capturing the power and grace of one of Jerry's retreats. Jerry and Mai, a very warm welcome to the podcast.
Hello, thank you to have us.
I think the conversation that we're really interested in today, is you're obviously working on a new project, and that would be lovely to discuss. But there's a theme to these projects, I think, including even the most recent one. Is that about male masculinity, or is the most recent project also about men's journey in the world?
The latest one.
Yeah.
So because we've worked on the first movie together, that's called Make Me a Man, and it talks about masculinity and vulnerability. Because Jerry has been working with this man in his talking circles in therapy for 25 years now. So as a woman and as a feminist, I just wanted to make a film. When I met him, I didn't even know it existed. And I just wanted to be a little mouse, to be in a room with these guys and see what's happening there. And so it wasn't possible because obviously I couldn't be in this men circle, but we could make a movie. And that was the first project we did together. And we've done a second project that is called Mayday, and that will be out later in the year. And I could film a retreat in a mixed group this time. So, and when I say mixed, is mixed in terms of gender. So we have women and men and queer people, but also in terms of class, in terms of spiritual practices, in terms of belief systems. And so, it's called Mayday, and we're very proud of this project. We cannot wait for it to be out.
And so you recorded Mayday was what, over a week or a weekend?
2 weeks.
2 weeks.
Yeah, 12
where
people.
Where was
it?
Secret.
Somewhere in the UK, possibly. I don't know.
Not.
Somewhere. And this
I'll
was
tell you where it is. It's in Narnia.
Okay.
It's in a kind of, I hope when people watch it, they go, this isn't like anywhere I've ever been. And that's intentional, not because we're being kind of avoidant or secretive, but we wanted to go beyond anything you'd really seen before and take people into somewhere that's not geographically rooted with any particular association, more into a more internal experience. So that was actually, when you say where, I'm not playing games. Actually, it doesn't matter where.
And what did those people come to do? They all had personal issues that they wanted to resolve. Did they come with an intention, or?
Yeah, they came with intentions, and with very different intentions.
We worked with them for 6 months before they came.
Okay.
So some of them are here to find the very I don't know, their heart have been broken into pieces because they come out from this highly toxic relationship, or they need to find out traumatic memories that have been erased because of the trauma, and they want to have it back now because they feel ready for it. Some people are just curious about what is a retreat. I want to know what's going on in this. Some people want to find part of their truth that has been left somewhere they don't know, so they want to reconnect.
Some people were part of the production company.
Some people were part of the production company and said, I want my place.
The producer was like, I want to come. Like, okay, why not?
Does everybody carry the things that they need to resolve? Because, I mean, let's just rewind time, you go back a few hundred years.
I think it's the wrong angle that I'm always talking to people about. And I think it's in the film, actually. I'm not trying to heal people. I'm not interested in healing people. I'm interested in, you sit people around a fire, they remember it. It's the most ancient human way of being together. And we were talking before we started about things that aren't working in our society. I think it's because we've lost touch with each other. So it's not important to me. Of course, everyone's got issues. Everybody has pain. Everyone experiences suffering. Everyone is wounded. Everyone, including our children, has shit parents. Sometimes it doesn't matter. I mean, of course it matters, but that's not the point for me. The point is to create an experience of togetherness, because I think whatever you got going on, it's easier with support, right? And that all the old cliches stand up. It takes a village to raise a child, blah, blah, blah. I'm kind of obsessed with this Dunbar number that we 150, and I think we've all grown, society's grown way, way beyond that. But I think when you put people in a small group, I mean, I think it was day 3 out of day 14, I remember saying to the whole group, we could all go home now. I mean, we'd done 3 days of just completely on it, in it, really, really deep work. And these were people, most of whom had never met before, who would never meet. After. Which was partly curated, but I mean, partly that's any group. But I think what you have that's wonderful with any retreat is, that I always love, and it makes me feel confident when I do them, is there's a commonality, because you're not in Benidorm. You've chosen to spend your money or take your time to go to a retreat somewhere, normally quite uncomfortable if you're working with us. We take away phones and electricity and hot showers and all the kind of things that people would expect in a spa. And we go quite hard because it bonds people. And the very fact that they've chosen that over, every time I do something like this, I always go, why the fuck am I not on a beach? What is wrong with me?
I do worry about you, Jerry. Yeah. I'm going to go have cold showers in the, But
if we're talking about wounds, I think our wounds can become our skill set. And I think for a long time, I've recognized that for all my, strengths and weaknesses as a therapist, I've got plenty of weaknesses as much as strengths, but my real strength is I know how to build families. And that comes as a result of being in a family, where I was trying to hold everything together as a kid, or I perceived that was my job. I mean, I couldn't, but, same would be true for you in your own way. But healing's it's not the main thing.
Ultimately, if I try and rewind the clock and say, 100, 200 years ago, there's a sort of, people were hungry, life was hard, the idea of sort of dealing with your mental health. And obviously we're in a very different place now. And it's interesting when you mention about, you make it hard, like cold showers, you almost revert it to a sort of 100 years ago thing, which is interesting.
We don't have cold showers. We don't have any showers.
There's no showers at all.
No, there's no showers at all.
No, there's no showers at all.
It's just a river.
Yeah.
And that's important, is it?
Yeah.
It's important to return to a very basic existence.
Yeah.
Because that all of this technology, all of this overlaying and newspaper, whatever,
even fragrance, even
fragrance.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
No deodorant, no showers.
And that's very interesting. And you're trying to get the brain reconnected. I mean, it's like, I was reading a thing years ago, which was just about feet, that the fact that we wear shoes mean our feet aren't getting communication from the earth like they used to. And it has an effect. I know this guy producing a product that it has things that stick into your feet. And it was like, Wow, what a basic thought that we always had this communication from our feet and we don't now because it's very comfortable.
Rick Rubin never wears shoes.
Does he not?
Yeah.
No.
But there's been an obsessed with being comfortable and the sacrifice of the mind becoming uncomfortable.
Of course.
Almost. Is that? I mean, it's too simplified, but there's an element of that's what's going on, isn't it?
Of course.
And when it becomes easy and we're warm and we're on sofas. Now, the curious thing within that, certainly within a business context, is, most entrepreneurs and business people I deal with very intense environments. They perhaps seek out, but they're also got sort of a comfortable environment. I mean, I think, we talked about having this conversation, obviously, apart from holding you both in extremely high regard, I think there's a very interesting conversation for anyone about what should I do about mental health? At what point do I recognize I've got issues? How do I deal with those issues? Is it, talking therapy? So at the moment we're talking about the sort of extreme version, isn't it? It's like the boot camp. Is that how, in a little way, someone going on a retreat, is that a little bit how someone's to think about it? They're sort of pulling the plug. They're hitting the zip cord or whatever, are they? And just sort of going, right, I'm just disappearing. And you have to do it for a reasonable period of time. Do you know what I mean?
I think one of the most powerful things is to, we've joked about this a lot. You list all the things that we're going to do, which are quite full on. And from fasting for days at a time, sleeping communally, sleeping out in the woods without any food or shelter. The things that people really go, hold on a minute, what are you talking about? Is when you say you're not going to have your phone for 2 weeks or 10 days or something. They go, oh no, you pushed me too far now.
Yeah.
I can't have my phone, So I'm even beginning to think maybe further down the road, I'm going to start doing kind of tech detox retreats, just take people away from their screens, I think.
Yeah, because now the most extreme thing you can ask to a human being is to live without their phones.
Isn't that mad?
It's mad. So we live in a very mad era of humanity. Maybe humans always say that, whatever the era they are in.
I think this is the maddest ever.
We're cyborgs, some would argue now, aren't we? We're no longer just humans. We're
exactly.
Human. I mean, we were laughing before about my experiences from a sales point of view, but we don't hold knowledge like we used to. I don't know my way around London like I used to. I don't know people's mobile phone numbers. I know my dad's and my mum's home number. What happens with that? How much information am I no longer holding? The brain will hang on to what it thinks is important. Now, I read Wikipedia every night, but you ask me a week later, I'm like, I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah,
like my brain's like, I don't need to withhold this. I mean, is the brain... I mean, that's a bit of a detail, but you wonder to yourself, the brain saying, well, I know I can access that, so it's okay. But, I think your statement's actually very powerful. The most difficult thing for us to now is take our phone away from us. If you took my phone away from me now and put it upstairs, that's a huge anxiety.
Yeah, and then you feel
I'm
naked.
on a podcast, like, what the hell? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
What do? You just for my sanity, you have a central phone to say, well, if your mum dies or something, we'll give everyone a phone number.
Yeah, there's an emergency number.
Yeah.
That never rang.
And which doesn't always work.
Over the last 7 years, it never rang.
It never rang?
No.
God, that tells you everything, doesn't it?
It's never rang. No, it never once.
Well, can we touch some wood? Because it's going to be like ringing.
Of course. But I think it's interesting because the benefit of it, and I hope that we will find ways where we can have both, but when you take the phone away and then people feel so naked, then it's a step towards your vulnerability and having what no one has anymore. It's an honest conversation.
The thing you told me about JR, the French artist who went to a prison, he was working, he's a street artist.
JR, the French artist.
Is he a street artist, graffiti, or is it?
Yeah, he used to do graffiti, but after he did black and white prints of human faces all over trains.
But the thing about, he worked in some high security,
in a
hardcore prison in California. These guys are, multiple life sentences. And he said that the level of presence, because they have never, ever had phones.
Yeah, these guys.
And the quality of presence.
In the prisons.
They've never knew this era
because they've been in prison for so long.
They've been in for 30 years. I mean, it's only 15 years. What are we on? iPhone 16. 16 years. guys who were in there before who've never been exposed to it had a different human quality of connectivity and presence.
Wow. Well, even being a generation like I was obviously much too young for this, but being a generation who grew up before mobile phones, I always think what a gift that is. I understand. I understand that world. I my formative years till I'm 21. I'm
still creative. We're still creative, but I was so creative in my 20s because I was so bored. So I'd get up and write a song. We had drum kit and amps in the living room. Just wake up, roll a joint, go in, make some music. If I had a phone, I just sat in my bed and scrolled through my phone.
He's at max now with TikTok rock.
Yeah,
I mean, my wife's very good at saying it to the kids. It's like boredom's good.
Yeah.
It's like we're desperate for kids to be permanently happy and permanently entertained. It's like, let them be unhappy and bored because that's when
boredom
you get
made me get curious. It made me explore. It made me experiment. It's a fantastic motivator.
Is it that the phone is just so good at filling that hole, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's so good at I'm a bit bored. I'm a bit anxious.
And it's turned all of us into junkies. I mean, I used to feel I was in a very exclusive club being a drug addict when I was young. Now, everyone's looking for that dopamine hit, and they've sculpted these machines around dopamine. That's not conspiracy. That's the reality.
So you go to this retreat, you take this all away. How instantaneous is it that things change? I mean, there's an adjustment, is there? And then there's this.
Regarding what?
Well, let's just go back to I'm doing 2 weeks on a retreat. I'm getting no showers, no this, no that. But it actually seems one of the key elements is you've taken my phone away. Amazing now. More important than having showers and hot water and all these things is all of that seems fine next to taking my phone away, isn't it? That I'm my umbilical cord's cut.
We bumped into someone in Paris recently who'd been on one of our retreats 2 years ago, and she said the most important thing from everything we did was not to have my phone. That really helped me.
And it's funny because people don't miss it.
No.
They really don't. Minute one.
No, you just see people sitting around talking. As soon as
they have committed to leave it at the entrance, if there is anything like an entrance where we're going, but they leave it there, they're not taking it back for 2 weeks. As soon as they're committed to do that, it's really easy. They don't miss it at all.
They're nourished by human contact. And I think that for a lot of us,
so many things to share.
That's what we're seeking on our phones is contact. And then give them the real thing. It's hardly, you're not going to go cold turkey when you got the real thing.
I mean, I found it absolutely mind-blowing that they've only just started banning them in schools and stuff. I mean, I found
it's amazing.
I mean, as someone who went to school, it's like, are you kidding me that 14-year-olds are still in many schools are sitting there with a phone in their pocket?
But didn't you I remember you telling me when I met you, so that's 8-9 years ago, that they were banning it in school playgrounds in France? Because they noticed that the playgrounds were silent.
Yeah.
Can you imagine a school? I mean, that sound still freaks me out, actually. The sound of playtime in a school still gives me, because school wasn't a good thing for me. But the idea of a silent school playground is really sinister to me.
Yeah, I mean, let's progress the conversation because this one element is, detox. So there's this very modern thing that's come into our lives. The other element is revert back to a really base existence. You've done these groups before mobile phones, have you? Are you old enough to remember doing that? Is the mobile phone ever not been a terror just having no showers was enough to change?
I've done them since the mid-90s. So yeah, before, very basic phones. But.
Did you think that in your anecdotal experience of the arc of people's mental health, is it wasn't as bad back then, or really everyone's been struggling for a long time anyway?
I would say that people presenting with particularly ADHD
is becoming so common.
Off the scale. And part of that, I think, is mobile phones and the internet. And our attention span being trained to all be kind of ADHD. My youngest daughter, I went in one day recently, she's diagnosed ADHD and is clearly on that spectrum, but she had her laptop and her phone and the TV on. So she had 3, and she was managing to do it. And I'm just like, oh God.
Yeah.
But that's her generation. I mean, she's 20, whatever. I was one of those Ritalin kids, but it's just because they thought I was stupid then. But I think the ADHD thing is massive nowadays for a lot of reasons. I mean, we could talk about that.
It's connected to trauma, isn't it? From what I understand it expresses itself much more strongly.
I think it's very connected with trauma. I think it's the reason I'm hesitating. It's multi-layered. I think the trauma thing's real. I think the trauma aspect of it is that, I referenced that phrase, it takes a village to raise a child earlier. There's no villages involved anymore. There's fewer and fewer parents involved anymore, as the economic situation means that the idea, my mum stayed at home when I was a kid. That ain't happening anymore for most families who can afford to have one person staying home looking after the kids. So the kid is put into daycare very, very quickly. I think that's a massive factor, and I'm seeing more and more of that. But what I'm also seeing is that generation, never know which initial is it, Gen Z, kids who are kind of hitting school age and of the age group to be diagnosed are being taken for, to their doctors and then going through the whole procedure. And then the parents who are more kind of Mai's generation and my generation are going, oh shit, that makes sense. So they're kind of self-diagnosing as they recognize what's being pointed out in their own kids. So you've got these different generations that are waking up to this reality. And then you've got something else that is a personal opinion of mine, which might be contentious. A friend of mine who's writes for one of the big newspapers got into trouble for connecting these things like ADHD and autism with kind of identity politics. Like suddenly it becomes the excuse, and she got a lot of backlash to that. I understand her point of view. I don't think that people haven't got these conditions. I think they all have. I think it's very, very commonplace now, but I think it becomes a way to legitimize trauma that we can't own, because there's still this hierarchy of trauma, which I buy into. I mean, when I went to my first ever group 32 years ago, I remember looking around the room and the stereotypes I felt envious of. The guys off kind of Glaswegian council estates who'd had the shit kicked out of them by their alcoholic dads. I felt jealous because I'm from Windsor and I went on skiing holidays and went to boarding school. It's like, what have I got to complain about? And I think people who have less visible traumas often struggle to legitimize them. And I think if you realize you're ADHD or you're a bit Asperger's or whatever, then it kind of does give you a reason to be in pain, which is not to dismiss your learning style.
Excuse as
no, well, that's why I'm avoiding using the word excuse, but I think it becomes something, a banner that people wave. I can't help it, I'm autistic, which is true. But also, if you kind of put your attention onto the fact that you've been really hurt, even if you don't feel like you deserve to say that. But I think it's part of the class system.
Well, you're sort of saying, oh, I've got all these traits which fit with ADHD. Oh, I'm this thing. It can't be changed except I could take drugs. Whereas perhaps, you exhibited these things, but you've got some undiagnosed trauma.
It's about actual legitimacy. If I say to you, I went to boarding school, I went on skiing holidays, my dad had a nice car, never went without food, had nice clothes, you're going to go, what's your problem?
Yeah.
Then you dig deeper, which is, most of my client base, it's funny because when I started, I worked in domestic violence and people used to go, cool, you've gone in the deep end, haven't you? And I'd always say, no, he's hitting her. I think I see the problem. You don't have to be a very good therapist to work that out. 30 years later, I work with people who the main problem is what didn't happen rather than what did happen. And then you're going, so what happened? Well, I don't know, nothing. And then it's hard to keep the conversation going then, because you're into kind of detective work and speculation a lot, because you're talking about very benign neglect, neglect that wasn't intentional, the neglect that a lot of kids are experiencing these days because their parents are having to work so hard to pay for them, the fairly average middle class existence, if they're lucky, to pay for the daycare. Those kids are growing up neglected, but no one's doing it to them. So they're not going to have anything to complain about.
It's not as black and white as violence.
It's not.
It's just, it's funny. My wife's so good at trying to keep the kids away from screens and stuff, and yet they see us just stuck on these phones all the time. You wonder how they're going to see it all. It's clearly very important to you, these devices, aren't they? But the what didn't happen is that you didn't have anything just very expressive in violence or Yeah, you had an average experience. Isn't that always the case, though? Weren't the parents always struggling to be present? I mean, the woman would take the role
No,
as...
no. I really don't think so. I mean, I'm definitely, I could be accused of romanticizing the past, which I do, but, my grandparents live next door to their parents, live next door to their brothers and sisters. All the kids played out on the green. Everyone kind of communally raised the kids. There was a village raising the children. You had but you didn't need daycare. There was no au pairs in those days. All right, maybe my ancestors would have been maids and what have you in big country houses, but it was still something that was done very collectively. And I think we live in such an isolated world now, especially in these big urban environments. I mean, who knows their neighbors anymore? We were in Marseille recently, which we're thinking of moving to. I was blown away by being in a big city where the amount of people that said good morning to me.
Really?
There's a number of other things, but people saying good morning on the street, that's something we've lost over the years.
If let's take a step back. So say I'm sitting and I'm thinking, I mean, I don't even know how to exactly identify mental health issues, but I think we all know when we're struggling. There's doing retreats. You do a lot of male groups, but there's group therapy, and then there's talking therapy. I mean, are there any I'm missing there as sort of main, individual one-to-one talking therapy, male groups they're all talking therapies in a way. I mean, you can get obviously into there's medicines and there's other ways of doing it, there's getting drunk together with your mates in the pub. But as a base, let's just start as a base position. Are those, you do it individually, you do it in groups, or you do a retreat, you do a sort of separation? Are those primarily the options available to me if I'm sitting there thinking I need help?
With me, yeah. Those are the ways that I do it, but they're all, whether it's one-to-one with me, I'm forming a relationship with people, and I don't tend to do short-term work. I've got clients I've worked with for probably 25 years now. I'm forming a relationship with them. I think everything I do is a response to the increasing isolation in the world.
The increased connectivity, and yet we're so isolated at the same time.
Yeah. I think that's why people are not that triggered about leaving the phone when they enter the circle, because they're nourished by the group.
Because they're actually isolated with the phone.
Yeah.
It's actually the thing that's making them lonely.
Of course.
Have you done much therapy in your life generally? Has that been...
Me, myself? Yeah. I've done since my kids is 19 years, almost 18 years. But I think that what phone does as well is that it's, so we were saying it's kind of chopping the anxiety away. And one of the anxiety is to be rejected by others. Is to be inadequate, is not to shine enough, not to have the right joke, the right expertise or whatever. And so when you enter a circle in a retreat like Jerry does, no one feels that. Because the settings, and that's what I really wanted to make a movie about that and propose Jerry to do a movie about one of his retreats, is that Jerry is... holding a space where he set rules that will make it okay for everyone, wherever you come from, whatever your intention is, you're welcome around the fire. The rules are actually very sophisticated now that I've, filmed him working, edited, re-edited.
Can you give an example?
For example...
I'm curious because I don't know what they are.
Yeah.
So as a filmmaker, most of the time when you write a movie, it's about a hero's journey. So the person is there.
What's the struggle they're trying to get to?
They have a struggle and they go through it.
Yeah.
Okay. And so they have grown through that. And most of our narratives is about how heroic this person is. Mm-hmm. She could be her fate or the destiny because of her courage, because whatever, or his, of course. And what Jerry does is exactly the opposite. He's holding a culture, he's creating an ephemeral experience, so 2 weeks, and the experience will transform anyone who comes. So in this retreat, I really wanted to have very different people. So we were saying different people, diverse, different ways of seeing life,
diversity of thought.
So people who are feminist activists and people who are rather masculinist, or this kind of essential masculine strength and energy and all this kind of belief system. Okay, you put these people around a fire, they may fight because they really don't see life the same way. And one will have to negotiate that, whether they can have a conversation or whether it will become a fight. It's their own story. But Jerry will have a way to make people listen to each other that is irresistible. And at the end of the journey, they will have a space where they have expressed their thoughts, their beliefs, but they have also listened to the other people's journey and be like, okay, maybe one of the guys say, maybe I need a new set of ears to listen instead of talking all the time. And I think that a talking circle, when it's well held, because it can be kind of dangerous to put people around.
Well, it could kick off.
It could kick off.
But there's an energy Jerry would bring, or when people talk about holding a space, there's a very particular thing someone needs to do, which is kind of I'm the boss.
Yeah.
It's very paternal almost.
This is the wrong word. We could say that Jerry is an alpha for sure.
Yeah.
Sure. He's an alpha 100%. But what I like about this alpha way of expressing in Jerry, I don't know if it's very English, but it's that he's using that power, his charisma, his knowledge for a compassionate purpose, for people to understand each other more, to listen to each other more, to connect with themselves more.
I mean, you're a feminist, you say, and I think, I think it's funny, you can't even think of what's the opposite of a feminist, because a feminist means equality. So a feminist is actually a neutralist in a way.
Yeah, it's for equality.
And I had to look it up years ago. Actually, you can have male chauvinism and female chauvinism. So I think most people, if you stop someone in the street, they think feminist is female chauvinism, which means that I think women are better than men, which I technically am, because I technically think they are better, other than taking the things top off bottles and throwing the rubbish out, you know. But there's an issue of men and women really lost touch with, their identities are so confused now. I mean, I think it's certainly true that as a man, and this is something I think you've explored a lot, Jerry, that I feel very lost as to what it is to be a man, maybe the man, or I think there's a sort of pressure on both sides. A man can never be a mother, really. They can. I'm not saying they can't, but they can't produce babies. They can't breastfeed. I mean, people may argue against that. So there's a thing that we're always limited by, but a woman could be anything now. And so there's the sense of how we sit. And it's fascinating because you would identify as a feminist. You wouldn't identify as a masculinist, whatever that means.
Oh, no.
Absolutely reject that.
Yeah. And what does it mean? It would mean equality too, by the same definition, wouldn't it? It would mean that we both seek equality. So feminism, when you look it up, because I had to years ago after an argument I had with someone I was very confused in, and then it is feminism is the belief in equality between men and women.
Exactly.
And then you can make an argument that, some intelligent friends of mine have said is that's bullshit. Men and women are different.
Yeah, but they can be equal in rights.
They can be equal in rights, and of course,
in opportunity. That's what feminism is about. It's a kind of, it's as if you say I'm a humanist.
Yes.
But if I'm an humanist who is anti-racist, I also understand what are the specificities of the oppressions in racism.
Yeah, okay.
That plays out onto people like me.
So it's the equal rights.
It's exactly that.
Yeah.
So we want equal rights. We want everyone to be seen as a human being, but there are specific ways to oppress people, whether it's about because they don't have money, or they are people of color, or they are queer people, or they are women. Sorry. So it's different. So feminists will know better how women or queer people are oppressed specifically. Anti-racists will know better how people of color are oppressed, etc.
I guess my question is, the phone has obviously had this huge effect on us and it's disconnecting us with its connection. I mean, the irony. But is it there's a disconnection between men and women as well? Is there a sort of part of what goes on is them reconnecting as men and women?
Tell me if I'm wrong, but I've always been so passionate about Jerry's work with men. But when I've been in his retreat 7 years ago, and it just changed my life. And over the years, because I've come ever since every year as a participant or as a helper, I've seen the world change because of me too. And I've seen the dynamics between men and women changing. And I've seen how healing it is to be in a circle where women can listen to men's stories and men can listen to women's stories. And I remember this specific year, it was 3 years ago. At the end of the 2 weeks, we found out circles after circles. So there's one circle every day, one talking circle every day. And circle after circle, we found out that all the women who were participating in this retreat have been raped once in their life. Every woman around the circle. And it gives me goosebumps just mentioning it. And men are like, okay, I get it. And it's not against men that we're expressing what we've been through. It's just, can we share our stories? Is there a space to share our stories, to be listened to be believed, to find support, instead of being victimized or... Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting for me because I've been raped as a man. So I always find it, and my wife specializes in rape. And I find this word rape is a giant word because there are just so many versions of that.
Of course.
There are people who've had sex and a few days later decided that maybe they didn't want to do that and they were a bit coerced versus what everyone pictures in their head when they think of rape, of a woman being dragged down a back street and being like forcibly, violent rape. And that, I know from my wife practicing it, it's incredibly rare. And actually most things in that, so I don't, and I could get attacked forcibly in terms of I'm taking, but as someone who has been raped, it's like, and had been sexually harassed badly and stuff. This word rape, I find, I mean, it's a bit of a tangent, but I just find it's like calling someone a murderer when really it's like, well, okay, this is a giant, I think it needs categories like murder does, first degree, second degree, third degree. It's almost like with rape, it needs to be like, can we categorize these a little bit?
Yeah.
But I think there's something very powerful, particularly for women, what it represents, because it's about that sort of, there's a natural sense of physical overpowering, there's almost, that's the implied sense when really it's about sort of consent and stuff. But that's slightly taken away from the point you made, because I thought what's really powerful that you said is that men and women listening to each other's issues, like why, it's almost unpopular, I would say, what a lot of the stuff you've done, Jerry, to go and look at men and look at what men are. Why have you got involved in that as a narrative or as a problem?
I haven't.
It's just sort of, no, you haven't?
This is a thing that, we talked about when we first met. I got no interest in gender. I got no interest.
Yeah.
I think I recognized, I had experience. I mean, again, there's lots of layers. I went and worked in domestic violence. So I was working with male perpetrators, and I went because I hated men, mostly because of my relationship with my dad. And I very quickly felt a lot of compassion and empathy for these guys who were struggling with a very basic language, which I'd been taught as well, which is if you're hurt, then hit someone. And I realized that most of them just needed to expand their vocabulary and they didn't want to be violent. They just needed to explore different ways of communicating.
You're saying they were hurt and then their reaction was to
that makes it sound like an excuse. But I think for most men in those days, I mean, we're talking 30 years ago, they had no language for vulnerability. Their role models were the John Wayne type stereotype. Like me, I was told I remember in Datchet where you went to school. I went to the local state school there because I wasn't posh yet. But I remember, getting knocked around, whatever in the playground. And my dad's advice was, if someone picks on you, punch them as hard as you can in the face. And that was his fatherly advice. So that's my programming. Then when I started to work with these guys, I realized they just didn't have another language. And if you could educate them, not just in what to say to other people, but when I say educate them about themselves, to learn to listen to themselves and find a different language to communicate, which is not popular language for a man, which is to say, I feel vulnerable, I feel frightened, I feel ashamed, I feel humiliated. Humiliation's a big one. So I started out there. Then I started running private men's groups. And why? I don't know. I've always run mixed groups. I love running mixed groups. I think there's something very efficient in running men's groups. With a mixed group, I think men hold back.
I was about to say, weirdly, that vulnerability will be best listened to by ladies almost, or maybe better listened to by men, but we're scared of what men will think of us. Is it? Or we're scared of what women will think of us?
I think,
it's interesting.
I think if you bring a woman into one of my men's groups, which we did when we were filming, they shut up because all their kind of mummy issues, all their programming about what they can show in front of women, how they should be as men in front, kicks in. So it's a kind of just an efficiency thing for me. I mean, I love working with men. I did run a women's group for a while. It was an absolute shit show. I mean, I thought it was great personally, and I was really into it. But it illustrates what Mai was saying, and I learned an awful lot from it. I'm very grateful. It only lasted about 4 months. They came to me and said, we'd like to be in a group with you. And I was like, well, I only run men's groups. And they were like, well, could you facilitate one for us? And we tried it. And the reason that it ultimately didn't last very long was because they'd all been violently raped. And each time they came, they were traumatized by hearing, and they go away and go, it took me a week to get over that.
What, listening to each other's stories?
Yeah. Whereas my guys, I would say 40% have been sexually abused, but unlike you and me, you and I are actually two of the only men I know who've been physically raped. Me by a woman, you by a man. I'm the only man I've ever met who's been raped by a woman. But all the other guys who've been sexually abused have been seduced, and most of them don't know they've been sexually abused because it was a special relationship, or the guy was really nice, or he was my favorite teacher, or something like that. And you have to persuade them, that was wrong. And they go, no, it wasn't that bad.
That's part of rape. I mean, I still remember my very old girlfriend, my brother, when I had this experience and coming, and you would get very confused, all these sorts of things. And that, my brother listening to me and like, well, do you want to do it again? No, I'd be like, I'm revolted by the idea of it. It's like, so therefore, by definition.
I think it's great what you're saying about the degrees of murder and degrees of rape. I think for me, I feel the same. I really struggle to use that word in reference to myself. I feel like I'm making a fuss still.
But that's part of the trauma, isn't it?
That's part of it. And it wasn't until I was 50 or maybe even older, I mean, in the last 10 years, that a therapist said to me, Jerry, what happened? I told him, and he said, that's rape. I was like, nah, it's not rape. He said, okay, so let's change the genders here.
Yeah, swap it around.
If it's a 17-year-old girl and a 45-year-old man climbs on top of her and she's crying and shaking in fear and he fucks her anyway, what's that? I was like, oh, that's rape.
Yeah.
I was an au pair / runaway working at, a friend's mum, and that's what she did to me. She told me it was like The Graduate. She was like, this is every young man's dream. And it took me 40 years or something to begin to recognize how much that had harmed me. So, but that would, just back to the women's group thing, that was the difference, was the violence and extremeness.
But why they, each time they'd come along and they'd listen to other people and it would affect them?
Yeah, it was re-traumatizing. And that is one of the tricky things with therapy, is you have to be very, very careful, because you can re-traumatize people through the telling of
the stories.
Especially when you have a collective. So that's one of the shadow sides of circle work, I suppose.
Let's be very practical. Let's just say, whether I'm a man or a woman, I don't know exactly what the signs are, but I think people know it when they see it, that their mental health's not in good shape. I don't even know where people start.
No, but this is I really want to address this, and I don't have a problem with what you're saying with mental health. I think it's a very real thing in our society. Yeah. And I love that. Was it the Krishnamurti quote? It's no measure of well-being, or something like it's no measure of well-being to be well adjusted to a profoundly insane society. So I think that's what we got going on. But I think there's degrees, like there is with everything. There's proper mental health issues. There's what I refer to that all of us have experienced at times, which I would say is emotional health issues. And then there's what I said to my mum had a carer last year towards the end of her life, and this old woman, she's the same age as me, old woman then, came in and she was just chatting, and it's weird when someone moves into your mum's house, so we were making awkward small talk in the kitchen, and she was like, "What do you do?" And I said, "I'm a therapist." And she said, "Oh, you must meet a lot of very disturbed people." Which I haven't heard that kind of line for about 25 years. And I said to her, if you hear that someone goes to the gym, do you go, "Oh, he must be disturbed"? She's like, "No." I was like, "Well, it's the same with me. People come and see me like they go to the gym. I'm now a lifestyle choice for people who want to stay healthy, want to stay mentally fit and well. And that is 99% of my business. And that's what I encourage. To the point where I don't work with, I'm not the best person to work with. People I work with in an ongoing way will have dips and will have, a crisis or a breakdown or whatever. I'm fine with that. But I realized over Christmas, I was talking to someone about, I'm a trained couples therapist, but I don't attract couples. The couples don't come to see me, and I thought, I'm not very good. And then I realized it's not because I'm not very good. It's because I don't want them, because when a couple comes, they're always in crisis. Yeah. No one goes to couples therapy. No, we're getting on great. Should we go and have a chat with a couples therapist? I mean, it'd be good if they did. They go in crisis and then they leave usually when that crisis is solved. I'm not in crisis management. I like working long term, just as a kind of lifestyle choice. If someone recommends you go to the gym 3 times a week for 40 minutes a day, what do you recommend to people? Does it depend? What kind of exercise should I be doing for my mental health, I guess? I think the most important thing, and I've been engaged in, I don't even know when I started. You say you've been in therapy. It does make us sound like we're mad to some people, but like I say, it's a lifestyle choice. So I go to therapy because it keeps me engaged in a state of perpetual curiosity. And the most important thing I've ever learned in the best part of 35, 40 years I've been doing this kind of thing, is to practice the art, what I call the art of self-inquiry, which is to go, is that true? Like one of our ongoing arguments, to the point where I swore I'd never work with Mai again, over this film, is I've been really critical, like really mean and nasty and critical. Of you. Don't get all vulnerable with me. No. I've been really mean, and I've accused her of being Mai in terms of producing the film. No, I've just said she's a really shit collaborator, and I've attacked her, and I've said you're really bad at collaborating. You really? Don't listen to my ideas. You just do your own thing. Blah blah blah. And I said to her earlier, I told her she had to pay me a tenner because I felt like I deserved a reward as a man for actually fessing up to something, which was a joke. But it's not true. I'm a shit collaborator. It's not her. Your vulnerability shows that. I mean, even as a man, it kicks in, doesn't it? This sort of like, I mustn't. Yeah, I have to be right. And also I mustn't cry. I must be strong. I have to be right. I have to be right. Yeah, that's curious.
I think it's such a curious way of living. I mean, I've had that as well, but for other reasons where I needed to be right because I didn't want to be attacked by my parents. So it was a kind of default mode that expanded in me when I grew up. But as a woman, we don't have to be right. We don't have to have the answer. We don't have to provide. So it's not something that is so prevailing. I would agree in my anecdotal experience that a man, I need to be right, and my relationships with women, there's other stuff that goes on with ladies in terms of, I don't want to use the word agenda, but they may have something that they're,
Yeah, but they're being right does feel quite male as a sort of it's an ego thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
And we've just got a bit stronger ego of like, that's our identity more, isn't it?
We've got more of a right to be right somehow,
Yeah, and there is you grew up with cowboy things and Superman, and you had to be this guy. I mean, what a burden.
We're very afraid that you hit on a real thing of when I'm having problems getting triggered in my job about a client or something, and I can feel my brain kick off. A lot of it is I don't like being wrong, and possibly I am a little bit wrong, and I know I'm a little bit wrong, and then my brain is doing everything it can to write another email, do another thing to show them I'm not wrong or something. Yeah. On the surface, I'm very happy to admit I'm very happy, but I'm okay with saying I'm wrong.
Well, there's a moment in the more recent film where I talked to the group about having got something wrong, and that wasn't rehearsed. It was something, and it was absolutely authentic, and it was appropriate, and I had misjudged something, but I think I was able to do that because I worked with a woman therapist in a group setting, and quite often she'd go, "Yeah, I got that completely wrong." I found it really inspiring. It was a wonderful gift.
We almost say it as a falsehood sometimes, men too, don't we? We do a sort of like, oh, well, I'm probably totally wrong.
Yeah.
I'm absolutely right about this. We throw that out quite a lot as a sort of, I notice actually, if I may use a medical term that I'm not really qualified to use, but my slightly more narcissistic clients do that slight, self-deprecation. Like, I'm absolutely wrong about this, Andy, and I don't know what I'm talking about, but, I'm absolutely right. So in a view, let's do this as a gym. Let's go and do it. I mean, I do, thanks to you, I've been dealing with my own stuff, and I'm in therapy. I mean, I find it hilarious, may I say, that I switch from doing meetings to suddenly I'm on this Zoom, and it's like, and because I'm someone who's scared of silence, I just start spouting stuff. I'm just like terrified, of like, and I wonder, now it's okay for a man like me that A, grew up around women, B, is quite open with my emotions. C, massive thing. My father told me he loved me all the time. My dad is the one that cuddles you. My dad is an incredibly, for his generation, 1942, I have now really realized how an incredibly open emotionally my dad is. For a man of his generation, the way he's open with me, the way he talks to me, is very unmasculine.
I would say it's very masculine. It's just not the stereotype.
It's just not the stereotype. Like, he's a man that he's reliable and he's strong. He's incredibly paternal, but maybe it's slightly for him. But what I wonder when in therapy is I think of my friends who have no emotional language, who do tend to be men, who only use humor, and they just clam up at any sort of awkward thing. I'm like, A, they wouldn't go to therapy, but B, I'm like, what happens in these sessions for them? I just start talking, I just keep talking until I find something to talk about. But it's an
art that you learn. I mean, I think that for me, it was back in the days I was young and therapy was different. But I think it took me 2 or 3 years before
Takes practice, like everything.
Yeah, I really began to work.
And so I've reached stage 2 of therapy, because I'm like, can I start doing something like a bit more give me something to model a framework around what I'm doing, because I can turn up and just spout shit. And there's value in that because I'm someone who can just like flick this thing and just let my stream of consciousness come out. Stuff just starts coming out. My brain just starts finding patterns.
The danger of that is you might as well hum.
I'm going to do that in the next session.
No, but I've seen that. It took me a few years to work out what was going on, but it's people who are really frightened of contact will just, like yourself, you've got fantastic, we used to call it gift of the gab when I was a kid.
I took a lot of bollocks.
Fantastic at talking, but it is also a way of creating a kind of noise field around it that keeps people away. It's not uncommon at all.
There is some things, if I'm really honest, there are some things that I would struggle to admit to anyone, even myself. There's a couple of little details. If I was really cold in the dark, maybe you're right. Maybe it's a sort of like,
But Mai's right. It's an art. It's an art. You have to learn how to be the client.
Can you live life without therapy?
Yeah, of course you can. I would say that.
But I'm married to a therapist.
No, but that's why I'm keen to reframe it, because you say most of my mates wouldn't go to therapy. I hope they don't go to therapy. I hope they find another human being that they can, what I offer, if you want to really strip it down to the most simple thing, is I'm a human being who sits and relates and engages with another human being where the fear is hopefully removed of what I will think. Because you go, oh God, I can't talk to my mates down the pub again. They keep hearing me talk about my fucking blah, blah, blah. They're going to get bored of me. Or I can't talk to my family because then they don't want to hear about my sex life or blah, blah. There's all these rules about what you can and can't talk about. So this thing we call a therapist at this point in history, because there's always been someone you go and talk to, some old man in the village or up on a hill in a cave or something, or a witch, before we burn them all. There's always been someone that we need to talk to that's separate from our social group or separate from our family. And I think that's the bulk of it. It's a human relationship where you don't fear judgment. And, people have, this is an interesting one if we've got time. People are saying to me a lot in the last year, aren't you frightened you're going to get replaced by a bot? And I'm like, no, I hope I am. I think it would be great. I genuinely believe, and I'm sure this will be possible soon. If you and I did a therapy session, we could put your phone on the table, and it had an app on it that listened to the whole thing without sharing it with the Chinese or whoever else wants to listen. That if that little bot could listen to it and then build a profile, and then you go home and it could continue to ask you relevant questions that made you self-reflect, that would be fantastic. Am I going to be replaced? I don't think I'll be replaced in 10,000 years, no matter how good AI gets, unless it becomes conscious, because it can't fucking suffer. And you pay me, and I say this to people from time to time, you do not pay me for an hour of my time. It doesn't cost 90 quid for an hour of my time. It costs 90 quid for my life. It cost 90 quid for the last 60 years. It cost 90 quid for the divorce, the mental breakdowns, the drug addictions, the boarding school, the sexual abuse.
I remember when you had some nasty crap online about something, and I remember you mentioned it, and I Googled something, and I saw someone saying, "Oh, this guy's got more problems than me," and I was like, good.
That was on my website, wasn't it?
Yeah, I was like, I don't want to, probably. I was like, I don't want to go to someone with a perfect life. I remember we were having problems with breastfeeding. There was this woman that we were put in touch with, and she was like this Germanic woman. I've had 72 children. I've breastfed enormous boobs. Everyone I've breastfed perfectly. I'm like, no, fuck am I getting this woman around the house and my white wife's trying to... Oh, it's terribly easy. I've had 72 children. Look, pop, 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 pop. I'm like, man, I don't need advice from someone who found it easy. I need advice. But actually, it's deeper than advice, isn't it? It's something about that third party we're talking about. It's something about you can't talk to you can't talk to your business partners or your wife. I mean, in my job as an accountant, I get a little bit of this. I'm a little bit someone that they feel they'll slump in the chair sometimes.
But it also works both ways, because my job is not just to be your mate. My job is to do what your parents or your friends might not say, which is you come to me, you go, I just can't get a girlfriend. And they're going, how do we tell Andy? He's just got a really bad BO. My job is to go, I think maybe you want to have a shower. That is my job, to be very real and very human and say, look, this is how I experience you. This is the fact that you just talk nonstop and I can't get a word in, Andy, is why we don't have a more intimate relationship. That's my job.
Yeah.
Tell the truth.
Out of interest, did you grow up in Vietnam?
No,
I've always lived in
Paris.
France. Yeah, okay. Because I mean, France has you wonder out of these cultural bits, like how the French. Let's do how the French see it differently. Then, so how the British approach to work is like, as my dear friend put it, and he's a Frenchman. He said, it took me a long time to work out that you guys go to the pub and get drunk to deal with your problems, when it's about food. And I don't know, if it's dying out, but if the men's way of dealing with it certainly was, and perhaps the women as well, but to go to the pub and get drunk with their mates, and that's how
It's not happening in France, is it?
Yeah, so what do the French do to deal with their problems? What would be the classic, where do you get your release from? Eating cheese and complaining or something?
Of course, cheese, wine, of course. I don't know. It's interesting. I think that women, they talk a lot together.
They gather together, but that's almost in all societies, isn't it? You know, British women would gather together, wouldn't they?
They don't have the same alcoholic. I mean, I always say the same joke because I always tell that, but I mean, to me, it makes me laugh. But whenever we go for a drink, I always ask for an adult portion because these little beers that you get in France.
In France, yeah.
But you get a pint there, and I remember saying to you, I mean, I'm not a big drinker, but I remember saying to you ages ago, it's £9 or €9.
Yeah.
And Mai was like, because they'd go out of business because we come here and we have one drink for an evening.
Yeah.
And they will sit. I mean, you know, we English people don't do that. You go into the pub and you drink.
Well, you're there to get wasted.
Yeah.
It's dying out.
Yeah.
But it's curious. I mean, you can analyze that it's curious that, to be honest, maybe the British are the weirdos. What is this destructive
I think I'm going to be really general now. I find French people on the whole deeper and willing to engage in something
but
other
that's
than
the people
football.
that you see.
Maybe a simple question like this. Do you know whether French people seek therapy, you know, on the whole more than we do or anything like that?
No, that I don't know. I just know that French people are, when they are in therapy, they're much more into analysis. They're not into what Jerry does, where you talk a lot with your therapist and he challenges you by mirroring back what Jerry was saying, how he experiences you. In France, is a lot about, okay, you're on the couch and you just speak and the person is behind and takes notes.
Okay, it's psychiatric. It's more medical, isn't it? I forget what it's called, but it's
old school. It's old school.
It's old school. It's not about a relationship.
I think France is behind in us. I think and I like that. I like that because I love working with French people because they're hungry. I think England, we're more influenced by American therapeutic culture.
Right.
And I love working with English people as well.
We've become a bit like, let's get it all out.
We expect it. And it's, you know, I like the freshness of working with French people. And I like the fact that they kind of get excited and they're really, really hungry. Whereas I'm like any English person. It's like, oh, I want to go to therapy. You know?
No, but, you know, we just learned last week, I didn't know that therapeutic talking circle seems to be forbidden in France. Because
group therapy.
Yeah, because they fear cultish
behavior.
Yeah.
It's not illegal if you're a qualified psychoanalyst. You can run a more medical
but in
based.
a hospital.
Yeah, in a hospital,
So
but you can't do what I do.
Wow, they're worried about creating cults.
Yeah, what you do.
Quite right too.
What you do would be forbidden in France. I mean, I need to double check, but that's what we were told last week.
That sits well with me, as in, like, I can imagine that, you know.
Yeah. And French people are much less collective than English people.
Much less collective.
Yeah.
We don't see.
They're much more into individual.
And I regard the British as quite individual in our way we approach it.
Nah, we got that whole Dunkirk spirit thing. What are we most proud of?
But, over the years of bringing these retreats together and gathering mainly English and French people, I can see different
Isn't
dynamics.
it humor? I mean, our one weapon is humor, you know, and humor's about self-deprecation, and then you have to learn and French people
we bond. But I think that all the English people or the British people I work with, once you get them there, they'll tend to stick it out. Whereas the French people might be the ones going, "Oh, I actually need to leave a day early," and you know, there's less of a sense of we're all in this together, which I'm really trying to kind of harness that and bring that out.
The French army were never any good, were they? As my history teacher said. No. I mean, it's better when their pecker is up, as my history teacher used to say. French army, great when their pecker is up. Useless when things start falling apart.
No, it's my favorite joke, which I take. You know, I'm always take every opportunity to share, particularly with Mai, even though she's heard it 93 times. But how many French soldiers does it take to defend Paris?
I don't know.
No one knows because they never tried.
So your first film was Making a Man, which is obviously, first of all, very briefly, what is Making a Man?
Make Me a Man.
Make Me a Man, sorry.
So it's a movie we've done together. It's a kind of, it's a documentary, 1 hour and 10 minutes. And it's about interviewing men who've been in Jerry's talking circle sometimes for 25 years. So who have been working on themselves or, being in therapy for 25 years and who have access to their vulnerability in an amazing way. And it's, as a human being, it's already very rare. But as men, it's like gold. So for me, I really wanted to listen to them. So when we met, I wanted to make a movie, but Jerry said no, because bringing
Too
camera,
private.
would damage the integrity of their work. And
I just didn't think they would open up.
yeah, and I think you were right. And after Me Too happened, and Jerry had the intuition that they had something to bring on the table. We didn't know yet. Just after Me Too, it was just women saying, okay, I've been abused, or Me Too. But there was no
response.
There was no response. We didn't know about the rape culture. We didn't know that it was linked to the way we maybe be programmed as men and women. We didn't make the relationship to that. But Jerry had the sensation that he could do something with just who they are.
I love the way you're taking it. You're telling it. It's it's so woke and politically correct and appropriate. It's just so not true for me.
Really?
Why?
I didn't give a shit about Me Too. I felt jealous because she'd made a film already. I was like, I want to make a film. That's why I did it.
Ego.
Yeah, she'd made a film. This is her second film. She'd already made it.
Okay,
I do relate to what you mean. The Me Too movement. The Me.
It's really the Me Too thing really kind of.
No, but you get these movements that come
it's just
along,
jealous.
and it's hard when you don't have a response. Like it's one of those things. It's a bit like it's hard for a white person to respond to Black Lives Matter. It's hard for a man to respond to Me Too, isn't it? But I think where you illustrate it there is interesting. Is here's these incredibly vulnerable men. Well, these men who have opened up and trained their vulnerability and work in groups to deal with what they've gone through. There's a vulnerability about Me Too, isn't it? Mm-hmm. It's all about that. Yeah. So it's saying almost the assumption is like, if you were being really crass, and I think I do see this sometimes from people, is that men don't have feelings almost. It's almost, I know that sounds ridiculous, but I for instance, I've experienced it with an ex-girlfriend who was like, well, I'm going to have a baby. If I get pregnant, I'm keeping the baby, and, don't worry, you don't need to do anything. I'll keep the baby and stuff. And I'd be like, what? And, and she was like, no, you don't have to do anything. I'll keep it. And I'm like, I'm a human, man.
Yeah.
You're talking about it. And those moments as a man, you're like, oh my God, you think I don't? There's that phrase, oh, men only care about sex or something. There can be this sort of thing of like, we don't have emotion. Now, what I think it is, and we've expressed this, men are definitely worse at expressing those.
That's why we made the film that we made in the end. I did some talking head interviews with some of the guys, and I showed it to a film director, a friend of mine, who said, this is great content, but you need you don't need a story, but you need some kind of something to tie it all together. And I'd been taking groups out to the First World War battlefields because it's a very emotive place for all of us. And so we went out there, and Mai came for that part of it. And we walked, in the misery of kind of rain in December through these old battlefields. And I think we were tying it in, not just for a visual or an emotive thing, but because for me, those are the people that went through that, some of whom came back, who... That's the cliche when you see someone talks about, oh yeah, my dad was in the war, but he never talked about it. So it's these generations of men politically. I don't think men have ever been that eloquent with our emotions. I think that's a historic thing. Anyway, but I think it was really exaggerated by the First World War and the Second World War.
Stiff upper lip.
Or it was immediate. My grandfather didn't talk about his experiences until just before he died.
You talk to anyone who's been in armed conflict. I've had a few friends in Afghanistan. We had John White on the show the other day, lost both legs and an arm. You talk about anyone who's actually really seen stuff, and you start asking the questions. They don't want to talk about it.
They can't talk about it because there's a split. There used to be, I think it got taken down. There was this fantastic, I don't know why I'm laughing. It's kind of almost comical. It was an anthropologist, 1963, so a year before I was born, filmed a war in Papua New Guinea. A war in Papua New Guinea involved probably about 40 warriors, and the mums, the dads, the grandparents, the aunts and uncles all took a picnic, sat up on the hill. It was like a football match on the village green.
Wow.
The warriors someone had pissed someone off from the other team, got into a kind of bundle, and the rule was when someone's killed, the war's over, right? On this particular battle, one of them gets an arrow in his shoulder and it's a bit painful, and they pull it out and put some TCP on it or something, and they go, kind of, all right, should we knock it on the head for today then? And they all go home, and that's the end of the war. But the point was, it's back to this thing of kind of community. It's a communal thing where the soldiers are not separate from the villagers who all go and watch the battle. Here, you're shipped to Afghanistan, you come back, we haven't got a clue what's going on there.
No
Some kid from Middle America sent to Iraq, he doesn't know who he's getting into, so it's much easier to objectify and, treat people, in the kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Atrocities when you're doing something to another.
Genocide and all that, yeah.
So he's taken from buttfuck nowhere out to, Afghanistan or Iraq. Then he's brought back. And there's a thing that a friend of mine told me who's a war correspondent. He said, which I don't know if it stands up now because this was a few years ago, but he said that Israel has the lowest PTSD amongst its military in the world.
Wow.
Because any former Israeli soldier can walk into any bar, any cafe, any restaurant in Israel.
Hugely respected.
Sit down next to the person next to them who is also...
Yeah, they all suffer
because everybody goes. There's not a separateness. And you read about people in the First World War trenches, they come home, no one knows what was going on there.
No. It's exactly as he said, I've read, it's this shift of war, and it got worse in the Second World War, this nasty kind of war that was just kind of industrialized.
And it's so far from our imagination that the people at home are split, and then you can never really come back. And so the only people you can talk to is veterans. And that's what we talk about in the film, this kind of idea.
You used it as an anchor. You used this, let's take men to somewhere, and whether you're spiritual or not, you take someone that you tell them, I've stood by that wall in Auschwitz where they shot 200,000 people. I mean, it's like you feel something. I mean, I was only 17 or something at the time. I could feel it. Like I was like, my mum weeping and stuff. And it was just like, wow. But that drew out a certain narrative, I imagine.
Yeah, and the thing that always appealed to me, I was never interested in guns or tanks or stuff like that. The thing that interested me the most, and I felt deeply jealous of, was you read about people in the trenches and the camaraderie that existed, the intimacy. I've read about guys going into battle hand in hand.
Yeah.
The rules broke down and men got very close and they shared all their food. There was a kind of intimacy that you then come back to normal society. We can't do that anymore. So that fascinated me. It's like, how do we do that without having to have a war? So that goes back to why I put people in difficult situations in retreats. You don't have to go to war, but you put them in discomfort, they bond quicker.
Yeah.
Because they're not complaining about the fucking room service. You put them in a 5-star hotel, what's the first thing they're going to do? Well, these towels aren't soft enough. Any
struggle's what we connect over. My joke's always they're getting stuck in a lift. If you got stuck in the lift for 6 hours with any human on this planet, you probably come out friends. You don't have a choice. Do you? You better learn. So you made this quite powerful film with people who were used to showing vulnerability and using this anchor of war, which is a very sort of emotive subject, for them to draw out how they feel and the different experiences they have. You now take this film and you show it. You were mentioning earlier, you then go and show it. What, in businesses, do you?
Yeah, sometimes, yeah.
On what basis do you show it? You like, all right, check this out, or what's the...
No, usually people, they contact us because they know our work about gender and about vulnerability.
Right.
And so we show the movie so that the people can have an experience which becomes a bonding experience because they've all watched the movie together. They've cried because the movie is beautiful and it touches people, whether you're a man or a woman. It doesn't change anything because I think that there is a kind of two-folded message that, I was working on my first movie about women, the woman of my line. So my family line.
Family tree, yeah.
Exactly. And I've been a feminist and I had a beauty blog. So most of my readership were women. And I was longing to go on the other side to see what was happening on the other side. And listening to these guys, I was like, there's no other side.
There's no other side.
There's no other side. The minute you really open your heart, it's just genderless. So there is something where I've learned so many things listening to this man. So the first thing was that I was very angry. And I was like, why am I angry? Listening as a woman. And I found out that I had my own sexist biases about vulnerability should be the feminine terrain. There's no way guys are going to take it back from us. You know,
well, it's
all
an
this
extension of what I'm saying that we almost, men don't feel. We're just sexual animals.
But I think it was really interesting to me that I was like, okay, I need to work on that as well. I mean,
we're screwed if both men and women are upholding these values.
Exactly,
right?
Because I think that we are raised to see people more through their gender than through their humanities. Yeah. It's very hard for me to talk to a human being. I'm talking to a man. I'm talking to another man and to another man here. It's very hard to just be with a human being. And I think that's what it's a formidable journey. And I think that's what we experience with Make Me a Man, is we are with men who are showing a human experience that is so rich and so beautiful. And
there's no other side. But we are different.
Exactly.
I mean, sure, there's I'm not talking about outline, we're making general comments here, aren't we? I think the mistake is to say there's no other side, but we're the same.
No, we are different.
We are different.
So we are different because we have different bodies, we have different hormones, we have different, and also hormones that happens in different steps of development, of communication, mostly in teenage. So, of course, we have very different relationships and experience related to that, but we also have very different programming. And when I was working with these guys in the Somme, I didn't even know that these places existed. And I was like, guys, why are we doing that? I mean, it was 4 degrees December. It was like, we could just have a chocolate. I mean, it's raining. I was soaking wet with my camera. And
you were inappropriately dressed. We had our proper male trekking gear on. She had something from Muji.
Yeah, I had a Muji, useless.
Well, I think that sums up the male-female experience rather nicely, actually.
Yeah.
My 4-year-old daughter teetering around on her heels all weekend, fell down the stairs, and I'm just like, what are you doing, babe? Anyway.
But I think it was really moving for me, because suddenly I was like, okay, if you ask the question what it is to be a man, I mean, if you were born in 1900 or a bit before, you were just sent there. That was what it meant to be a man, is to be sent to a battlefield that you don't know, defending people you don't know. And in the case of English young guys, it was to be going with your mates from the village, with your football team, etc., and to be killed in 1 hour when you're 17. It's horrible. Yeah. And I was like, this is not a feminine horizon at all.
If you try to reverse this film, if you try to say what's the opposite film, it's not actually necessarily women exploring their feelings, which is more normal. You can turn on the TV and find a chat show with, and you see it with your mum and your sister chatting, and, they talk all the time. I don't know. The opposites maybe it's women in a work environment. Maybe it's a very male, like the to say there's no other side. I don't know. Exploring the egotism almost. If you're exploring the vulnerability of men, it's like, do you explore the egotism of women? Or, it's a curious question. Like, did you think about making an opposite film?
Yeah, but it would be much more about getting to the domestic life, raising the kids, juggling between all sorts of different facets of
the pressure of being much
a good
more
girl,
not duplicit, but a woman almost has two burdens, don't they? Now it's the sort of burden of being a mother, or being maybe not being a mother, but but
it's being an extraordinary mother, and an extraordinary lover, an extraordinary intelligent, witted woman at work. There are too many we say too many hats.
What women carry, I find, my simple version is men only think about today and maybe tomorrow. We're so short-sighted in our view. And that makes a lot of sense if we're going to defend ourselves from someone attacking. It's like, all right, let's go do that. And the way I watch my wife, who's phenomenal. And that's why I'd be a female chauvinist, because I just see so much more incredible behavior from women. They're more honest, more, I don't know what are the right words, but just they give a shit on a level that I'm not even close to. I don't think men give that much of a shit in terms of how far ahead we're thinking, kind of very short-sighted. And I see what my wife's worrying about, or previous relationships I've had, and the way they're, the way she cares for our children, and she's planning out and she's thinking and she's worrying about this, she can't sleep at night. And it's like, God, well, I'm all right. I'm off to bed again, babe. Night, see you in the morning. There's something in that for me, in my experience, that we seem to be able to shut it off and just forget about it, and that thing that they carry that, the center of a home is rarely the man. I think it is the woman,
I agree with all of this, but just to keep it on the contentious track, I don't know if I've ever witnessed nastiness between men in the way I've seen nastiness between women. I think, and they don't do it to us as a rule. You can get unlucky. But I think the way that women can tear into each other and be...
Yeah, but I think once again, there's a lot of programming.
Yeah, no,
where
absolutely.
the competitiveness,
I'm not saying it's nature. I think it's really trained.
But when I grew up,
trained.
My sister was always changing her friends. Oh, how's Hannah? Oh no, I'm not talking to her anymore. I had friends. I made a friend. That was it. You know what I mean? As a man, it was just stable, and she just working through different people.
I do wonder if there's something that turns you against each other.
It's just that there is something that is more conditional. We're so conditioned to be perfect that of course we resent someone who is not perfect.
That's interesting. We want to be right and you want to be perfect.
Yeah, we want to be perfect. We want to tick all the boxes.
I know. Yeah, I do really relate to, not personally, but I relate to the women in my life and how they try and uphold that, isn't it? My dear sis who's passed, who sat in that chair and said this very thing about, she was just very passionate about the idea you got to be a perfect career and a perfect mother. You can do both, but not at the same time. And she's like, whenever you see these people online that seem to be doing both, whenever you see it, she said, whenever I pick underneath the surface and talk to them, there's a lie in there.
Of course.
There's a nanny all the time, or they're not a good parent, or they're not actually good at their job, or they're,
depressed.
But they're desperately trying to show everyone they are. And then it creates this enormous pressure on everyone to sort of fulfill it, isn't it?
Of course.
Well, it's been for me, just an amazing conversation to try and talk about some of these things. So thank you so much for spending the time today. Well, how can I see Make Me a Man? Where do I see that?
MakeMeAman.com.
.com, yeah.
Okay, go
Is
check
it
it
.com?
out. And you would recommend that for anyone? Would you recommend that? Because when you talked about people using it in business, because it almost, for me, in the modern world, to try and say, we're going to watch the thing about men, I can imagine a few, probably women going...
No, I'll tell you who our biggest audience is. It's women who watch it and go, oi, you're going to watch this, mate.
Yeah.
And they want their boyfriends and husbands.
They want their boyfriends to watch it.
Love Make Me a Man. I think that women, they would love their boyfriend, their brothers, their fathers to go and see a therapist sometimes. They would love it.
That's a really... really important point to end on. I feel sorry, I am sorry for people who can't afford it. And I think it's really hard to find the right person. You helped me find the right person. And by the way, in the last year, I saw 4 people. And, for me, I had to find someone who smiled. I could not stand, Nafisa's always got a lovely smile on her face. I could not stand, she's brilliant too, but I couldn't stand turning up to these things. And they were like, right, today, I was just like, no. I don't know. But it's very personal, this choice is all I'm making, isn't it? That's chemistry. Really important for me. But finding a good one is really hard. If you've got any recommendation how to do that, there's websites and people to do it, isn't it? I think just finding someone you can talk to on that level is so fundamental. And just to finally understand, if you want to join a men's group and you were kind enough to try and, that's a harder thing to join, isn't it?
That's really hard. It's really hard to join my groups.
Because they're so developed.
Yeah, you try and join a 25-year-old group, they're family. You know, so we're victims of our own success. But I do have 4 or 5 guys who are started groups under my kind of umbrella in the last few years who I supervise, and you can find them through my website.
When do I go for group and when do I go for individual therapy? Is there anything that helps me decide that?
What I say to people is there's different things you can get. If you want the one-to-one focus. I mean, my favorite way of working is you see me one week, you come to a group the next. You alternate it, but there's different things you get. If you want the one-to-one attention, you can work with me. Like I say, I've worked with people for 25 years.
JerryHyde.com.
.co.uk. But I think I've got blind spots, like anyone's got blind spots. So you could sit and talk to me for years and I'd just miss something. The buzz for me, and the reason that I still get a buzz out of running groups, is I can sit in a group with someone and someone else will cut across and go, but hold on, I'm looking at it like this, and I'll go, fuck, I missed that. Yeah. That's the buzz. And that's where my ego's in good shape, actually, because I like someone to do better than me. I like someone to spot something I've missed. I think it makes for very safe space if it's held well, as I said.
Yeah.
Because someone's going to get it. And you come into a group that's been going for 25 years, you got 8 therapists, really, because they've been doing it for that long. They're as good as me in their own way.
And there's no quick fix is my other learning from it.
You don't need fixing. If you don't need fixing, then you don't need a quick fix. We need to really change this way of looking at things and see it like going to the gym.
So in that sense, it's not a question of recognizing whether you are in a state to be doing this. This is something you should be trying to seek out and do.
If you're curious,
if you can. But what I'm, almost by the quick fix I meant, it's like how we are puzzles and how it's these layers of onion and it takes, I saw it in some of those groups I was in with you, Jerry, that, it was hard for me to understand how someone had made a big move forward, making quite a small statement in a way, or maybe it was a big statement, but it felt like those little graduations when you suddenly understand something a bit better, isn't it? I mean, in my own life, I find it's like, I already knew this, but it's somehow it becomes clearer, doesn't it? It's like, that's what it is. But that's a great way to end, to say that it's not that if you're in a really bad place, as I personally was, get some help for sure. But actually you're really saying, even if you think you're in a good place, this is just part of doing it.
I like our show, the Mad Indian Guru, and there's a great quote from him. He says, never trust anyone else's word unless it's coming from within you also. And I think that's a good therapeutic relationship, where someone goes, and have you ever thought this? And you reflect about it, and you go, not because someone's told you about you go, yeah, that's true. You recognize it. All the therapist does is kind of construct the right conversation or the right questions to make you think about your truth. I'm not trying to give someone else my truth. It's my truth.
Finally, do you think, okay, I go to a therapist, how quickly do I know whether this is the right one for me?
Same way as when you go on a date with someone.
Pretty instantly then.
It's chemistry. 80% chemistry. 80%, 20% training experience, 80% can I sit and talk to this person? Can I open up? Do I feel energetically that I want to be around someone? It's no different to Tinder. Therapy is no different to Tinder.
Jerry, Mai, thank you for doing two of my favorite people. Thank you for doing this. I hope it was a useful conversation for people, exploring something that is, so fundamental to our well-being as these humans we are.
Thank you, Andy.
That was this week's episode of Business Without Bullshit. Thanks, Dee. Thanks, Romeo. We'll see you next Wednesday. Ciao.